You can have all the programs you want in the world, and programs are fine, but it's more than that. We really want to push people to have a mindset change, but we really want an army of people to choose to live differently. So if programs go away, if your funding stops, you don't.
Welcome to Place Matters, a podcast about the intersection of race, place, and poverty. We will explore the belief that the path towards ending inequity and promoting prosperity is through the work of holistic neighborhood development. The content for this podcast is based on over 45 years of experience, expertise, failure, and hope from our organization, Focused Community Strategies, better known as FCS. This is the Foundations series, where we will talk about the big ideas and core frameworks that make FCS, well, FCS. I am Sean Duncan, the Director of Training and Consulting for FCS and the host for Place Matters. For the last 15 years, people from all over the U.S. and folks from a number of other countries have made their way to the neighborhood of historic South Atlanta to visit us at FCS. They come as pilgrims in search of a better way to make a difference in their communities. And we spend time carefully walking them through our neighborhood and through the work we're doing to promote flourishing in this place. And it's not uncommon for people to see something we are doing here that they want to replicate in their own community. And as honored as we are by this, we frequently talk people out of it. Not because we don't stand by what we do, we are convinced, though, that it's our why that deserves replication, not just the what. In this episode, and the one that preceded it, we are talking about just that, the core values that allow FCS to have the impact that we do. And joining me today, as we continue our conversation on core values, is Pamela Stringfield, FCS's Director of Neighborhood Engagement, and Stacy Broomgart, one of our lead consultants. Well, in this episode of our podcast, we are going to be talking about the core values that shape FCS's culture and mission. Two of those core values are neighboring and dignity. Another one is development, which we're going to commit another episode to talking about. But in this episode, we are specifically zeroing in on a core value of neighboring and dignity. And this conversation will be the one that goes off the rails the fastest. So just if you're listening out there, just hang on. It's going somewhere. I promise this will go somewhere good. Just hang on for the ride as it happens. So it's interesting that we turn the word neighbor, which is a noun. It's been a long time since I've been in grammar class, but I think I'm getting this right. We've turned neighbor into a verb or a gerund maybe. Neighboring, it's an action word now. Could you define or describe what we mean by turning this noun into a verb?
Yeah, we mean that it's an action of being with and for in a certain defined place.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add to the importance of neighboring, or what it is for me. It's the idea of choosing to be close, choosing to come alongside, choosing to press in to say, I'm going to live differently in order to incorporate myself into another person's life. So neighboring for us, for my husband and I, we moved into the neighborhood that we moved into because it wasn't just a great deal on real estate, but we wanted to live a life in such a way that we had to intentionally press ourselves into people's lives. We wanted to be redemptively irritating.
Yeah.
Where we're just like,
I know
we want to be.
One of those words is true for sure. We work together.
Yes.
So.
But we wanted to we chose to live that way. We wanted to be intentional. You don't just accidentally become neighbors and having your life woven into somebody else's life. We live in such a culture now where people are like, you stay over there, I got my little car, I got my little house, my little dog, and I'm going to stay on my property. And we wanted to really push back on that. I'm old school, so I remember where you would get up on a Saturday morning and run around and do your thing, or just meet everybody, or everybody. And so we wanted to just come back to that original design of how do you be friends and family. And so we wanted to live that way. So we bought space and we said we wanted to not just live next door to people, but we want to weave our lives in. And so for us, neighboring is not just proximity, but an intentional weaving of life together.
Yeah, so by turning it into a verb, we're clearly indicating these are actions that must be taken in a defined geography and people who are close by. It doesn't happen by accident. This is incredibly intentional. However, we've also named neighboring as a core value, not just, well, here are our practices and programs, which are the action part. But FCS is not just saying like, here's our neighboring programs. We've said, hey, as an organization, we've got 3 core values. And our first one and most important one is neighboring. So what does it mean that word forms a core value and not just a set of programs?
Yeah, again, just going back to what I said, just again, it's you can have all the programs you want in the world, and programs are fine. And we'll talk more about that later, just the importance of having dignified programming. But it's more than that. We really want to push people to have a mindset change. That it's, again, I'm very pro programs, but we really want an army of people to choose to live differently. So if programs go away, if your funding stops, you don't. If you got breath in your lungs, you can make choices about where your kids are going to go to school, where you're going to live, how you're going to spend your money, where you're going to get your groceries, wherever it is, because you're saying, you know what, I may not have access to whatever, but I am a human being and I'm going to choose to live this way, where I'm going to live proximate and I'm going to have my life woven into whoever is around me. And so again, we want to come back to this idea of how do you make a disciple or armies of people who are choosing to live their lives flipped inside out versus inside or closed in. And so for us, that's why it's important to say it's a mindset posture first, even before you even move into programs.
Yeah. Because neighboring is, in the programmatic sense, can be obvious. Like, okay, well, this activity over here is like a treat street, this big party we have on Halloween every year, and there's all these activities and neighbors outside. Oh, that fits in the neighboring category. But when we say, no, this is a core value, you should see that in what we build and how we build it. It's supposed to show up in all these places. There's I appreciate a paradigm shift that's occurred in kind of poverty alleviation spaces where people have identified this work is often transactional and it should be relational. And we say, amen, absolutely yes to that. But there's something different when we say neighboring. It's not just relational. We're choosing a place in people.
Yeah, I think that word is misrepresented. Often the relational piece is decided by like a certain power dynamic. So I think neighboring is different because it says that we belong and this is our place, and it's a different type of relational posturing. So it's not, and mutuality can be, we're practicing mutuality because we give food and they come to get the food, and that's our relationship, like you were referencing. And so, but that's not what we're talking about with neighboring at all. And it's a core value, because it says that you belong, we belong, we're in this space, this ecosystem together, and we have a responsibility and accountability to one another, to care for one another, and also to care for this place that we coexist in.
That power dynamic is really interesting. I'd love to hear one or both of you say more about, even in the shift from transactional charities to relational work, there's still a power dynamic that goes unaddressed. Say more about what that is.
Yeah, I would, as you're talking about just that word of that mutuality and the idea of like this two-way relationship. So like if I often talk about like my neighbors, I don't always need a cup of sugar, but I go over and I make myself needy by saying, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar? And I can go to Kroger and get my own sugar, but I want to practice what does it look like to tell my neighbor, like, hey, I need something from you. And if you have means or power or privilege, you often don't have to need. And we often want to put ourselves in a place where it's like it usually comes from a good place. I'll say it that way. I'll be charitable. But you're always the one with all of the stuff. And you don't know what it's like to be on the other side of that, where you're the one having to show up and say, hey, can you give me some food? Can you give me toys? Can you give me a job, fill in the blank? And so what is it like, even on the smallest levels, to say, I'm going to exchange power. I'm going to I'm going to limit myself in order to be needed here, and to see what that feels like, and to empower somebody else to say, you know what? Pam can't go to Kroger, but she's gonna be needy, and to use. I'm going to talk about this later, but you use those opportunities to build relationships with people. So, like I don't need a cup of sugar, but if I go ask for a cup of sugar, I might learn that my neighbor has something going on. And so not only are they serving me, but we actually get to exchange, or I get to say, you know what, my kid's acting a mess, and I got 2 boys and they always acting up. What you do with your kids? Your kids are doing so well. Like, do you have Tell me about what you're doing.
Just take my kids away
Take
from
my
me.
children.
Can they live over here?
Can they
3 days a week?
stay? I'll come get them. I'm right next door. Just drop them off.
Yeah.
But just the importance of practicing, just sharing that power and seeing what it's like to be on the other side of that.
Yeah. I've worked with churches or faith-based groups and have talked about the story when Jesus sends out his disciples in groups of 2, and he pretty deliberately is like, you can't take any money with you. You can't take a change of clothes. So what you got to do is you got to show up in this little neighborhood. You got to knock on somebody's door and say,
help me.
You got a job for me, and can I stay here? And Jesus like, and eat whatever they feed you. And like, for Jews of that day, that's a big ask to just show up in somebody's village and be like, I gotta eat what's here, even if it is not what I'm used to eating or what I want to eat. And so there's this sense of like the complete disruption of the power dynamic, where most of the models we've seen involves whether you're culturally in the majority or you're economically advantaged, or there's all kinds of things like you come in with so much power that even you might even be aware of, and to find ways to flip that dynamic to where we're neighbor, right? We're amongst each other here.
I think that plays into a quality too of that it's unassuming, like the posturing is unassuming of that I'm necessary, and that you have a power and capacity to do things inherently, and that you're gifted at or skilled at. I think that's also that, because everyone just wants to belong and wants to have value and to be needed. We all want that. Like, it's just built into our DNA.
Yeah.
And so I think that power dynamic is so important of how we posture when we're neighboring.
Yeah, we would all rather give than receive. I mean, as even said, it's more blessed to give than receive. And I think that's not just because you're getting blessings from somewhere because you gave. Like, no, actually the act of caring for someone other feels so much better than having to be cared for. And we've got to figure out how to extend that gift to our neighbors, which, by the way, you can probably hear the act of neighboring happening in our building. We don't have a closed studio and a nice production room. Like, this is a active space. So you probably hear lots of laughter and action in the background. Now, one of the things I love about both of you is just your own stories of entering into this practice of neighboring. I think having watched you do your work, for you, what is instinctive and almost as like common as breathing, for other people, it looks like this, like, how do they do that? And both of you are like, well, what do you mean how? Like, you just breathe in and breathe out. That's just the way it works. But what I love is that there's influences that shape that for you, right? There's stories behind, you weren't just born with this gift and it happens to be there. Like, there are things that formed you. So talk a bit about the influences that shaped you to be postured in this way, but also to practice life this way.
I can definitely help with that. I came into this work at FCS as somebody who grew up. I'm a beneficiary of this work. I was a little kid in a low-income community, and a motley crew of folks, black, white, and every shade in between, descended onto my community. And they were there not just on Sunday to do their little praise dances and leave, but they loved on us. They were neighbors. They, Monday through Saturday, they were in our neighborhood doing Bible studies or coming over, having a cup of sweet tea with my mama, throwing a football with my brother. If there was a window broken, they would fix it, or they would just linger. And I just through their relationship with us, they started just loving on us and just being normal. Look, can we just talk about that? They were just normal. And there wasn't like, if there was an agenda, I never felt it. My family never felt it. We always felt like loved by them, seen by them. It was honestly the first time that I remember as a little child experiencing a man that was very kind to me, that wasn't a parent or a relative. They saw something in me and they affirmed me without it being weird. And there was no strings attached. But they didn't just do this, for a month or so or for the summer. And then after the summer, they were gone. But it was their life. And many of them to this very day, I'm much older now, and we're still friends. Like, we still connect with each other. And their impact in my life has been long reaching. And because of their modeling, they weren't perfect. They didn't know what they were doing. Let's just be clear. They weren't sitting down.
Which is good news for all of us.
It is. For them, they were like, well, I don't know, but if the good news is good news for me, it's got to be good news for everybody. So I'm going to take this good news and we're going to see what the Lord's going to do with it. And so they came to my neighborhood and just stayed. They just wouldn't go away. And I'm so grateful that they chose to linger and not just see me as a program or a summer project, but they said, we want to be here. We want to be present. And so they were.
Wow.
And it literally changed my life. And I saw them, but then I became a disciple of like, I want to do what y'all want to do. And what I loved about them, they came to my neighborhood and it was a mess. It was a mess. But they never said that.
Yeah.
They never. There was more criticism about my neighborhood from us, from the insiders.
Yeah.
These outsiders were like, yeah, I know there's a gang problem. I know there's alcohol and drug abuse and all the things. We're not saying it's not here.
Yeah.
But there's so much beauty.
Wow.
And there's so much power and love, and there's so much goodness and history. And I'm like, where is it? And I didn't see what they could see, but then as I lingered with them, I could start to see my neighborhood that way.
Wow.
And I was able to start to find beauty in the middle of just a lot of brokenness. And again, I'm a child. I don't know. I don't think they have like a book, but they were just doing this like breathing.
Wow.
And so because of their modeling, I'm now a disciple, and now I just keep doing this work. And even if I wasn't paid a dime to do it, I can't live any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Like just they were just humans. And I think for some, it's like, good news, bad news of like, the work of neighboring is about just being a ordinary human with ordinary humans, and at some level it's like, oh, that's kind of relieving. It kind of takes some of the pressure away. But then it's like, oh, I don't have the like security blanket of a program or a table to set up for things to be distributed, and I can kind of stand behind it, and I can kind of operate out of a role here versus like, and I remember wrestling with that. It was like even praying deeply for a certain way of life in a certain neighborhood, and feeling like, oh, that prayer's been answered. And look at the people from all over the globe who've been resettled in this neighborhood where I'm living, and I'm struggling. I'm like, nobody seems to need me, and I didn't know what to do with that. It was like, well, if I can't serve them or teach them English or help them, it was like I felt out of place. It's like, well, I wanted this to happen, but I have no idea what to do with it. And like, it took an embarrassingly long amount of time. I won't tell you how long for me to be like, oh, they would just like for me to come sit on the porch and just chat. And they would love to give my kids ice cream before dinner and things like that, and so it took this like totally reshifting of like, no, just linger, which is such a beautiful word of like, because that was probably when it was the strongest moment for me, is like, as I was thinking through, why is this not going the way I thought it would? I saw myself like flying into the driveway to come home for something real quick and flying back out to go to a meeting. And they were sitting on their porch when I flew in. They were sitting there when I flew out to go to the meeting. They were still there when I came back. And I was like, maybe they figured something out about life that I need to tap into. And I was like, oh, they just want me to come over and learn about where they're from and eat the food they make I've never eaten before and spoil my kids. And, there's a whole different kind of thing took off. But Stacey, what about for you? What were the influences that led you down this path?
Well, I mean, I guess somebody has to be the Debbie Downer.
Some learn from it being done well. Some learn from seeing it done poorly.
So be encouraged, listener.
Yeah, be encouraged. So my experience was a bit different in childhood, because there were plenty of people ascending on the neighborhood that weren't from the neighborhood. And so under the, guise of establishing relationships and proximity and all of the catchphrases. But the challenge was when the program was over, they were gone.
Yeah.
And then if there was another program the next season, it was all different people and volunteers. And so I learned that people come and go. From outside the neighborhood, but inside the neighborhood, we're staying. We are, this is the people that I want to exercise my energy, establishing relationships and trust and credibility with, because they're the remainers. They're going to be here. Somebody coming from outside, I don't know where they're going to come, where they're going to go. And I was very hurt by that. I remember, as a small child, just feeling completely abandoned. It's like, I thought we were friends. And what happened? I did. And so I think that's really what kind of stoked the fire in me, is that I don't want to be that kind of. I don't want those kind of relationships, and I don't want to be a participant in that type. So these have to be authentic and genuine, or I'm not interested in because I have value, I have dignity, I can do something. That's another thing of participation. So when folks will come into the neighborhood, like they're orchestrating what's happening, what food's being served, what's
well-oiled machine. They've kind of got their program all set.
And everybody has their role, and they've got a timeline. And buddy, when it's 6 o'clock, they're out of here. Don't matter what's happening in your life. They're gone. And so always just wanting to, I wanted to feel needed and just no room trying to wiggle between the elbows at the
Yeah.
table and
Oh,
just,
wow.
yeah, tough.
Say more about the word linger. I think that's a significant,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people to miss that that's a word that carries a lot of weight when we say it. It's not just an accidental word that popped up for you.
In the last months, that word has meant a whole lot to me as life gets busier and busier and busier. And I feel like there's this space, there's this part of Pam that I miss. I call her Linger Pam or Hacky Sack Pam, where you remember you're
Everybody
in
loves Hacky
college.
Sack
I
Pam.
love her too. She's awesome. But just I remember like just being in college and you're sitting in the stairwells with your friends, singing songs, just making up harmonies, or on the quad playing Hacky Sack. Just you got time. You got time. Class is gonna do what it's gonna do, but in the interim, like you're gonna kick it with your friends and you're making all these memories. And I don't remember much about my classes, about my computer science programs that I did not do well on. But I won't forget sitting in the stairwells with my friends, designing music, or being outside, or being on missions trips, or being wherever we were together, creating these shared experiences. And so when I think about this work, the importance, it's easy to get caught up in, I've got to execute this program. I've got to do the next thing. And you forget, or I got to answer these emails. I got a host of emails waiting on me right now. But if I stop in the coffee shop, or if I stop anywhere and Mr. So-and-so walks up to me and says, "Hey, how you doing?" I know I'm going to be in a lingering situation. It's going to be more than a,
You're like,
okay.
am I happy about this or unhappy about this right now?
Gentle way to say.
Listen, there are so many divine interruptions in this work. So just prepare yourself. So it's the importance of, I'm going to make space to linger. I'm going to, almost like this gleaning principle. Like there's so much in this work to keep you busy, but you have to say, okay, emails, and okay, funders, or okay, whatever. That's got to be taken care of. But I'm also here to people. The peopling is the work. And so I need to be able to linger with them. And that lingering is disruptive. It is informative. It's going to upset it's magical. And sometimes I get the most done if I just will choose to sit with Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so versus answering my emails. And I leave the work more filled up than if I just would have stayed and answered all those emails.
My non-majority culture friends have definitely pointed out the way us majority culture folks don't do lingering very well.
Don't look at me when you say that.
No, I'm just saying. I'm talking about me, nobody else. I'm just talking about me.
Me.
And thinking about a particular neighbor, not native to the United States, and them inviting us over to, I don't know if it was a birthday party, what it was, some sort of party they were hosting in their backyard. And I remember asking, like, well, what time does it start? And like, I remember him looking at me, and I was like, maybe I need to ask the question differently. So the language, maybe it's a language barrier kind of thing, but he did give me kind of a weird look. And like, I kind of asked it again, and he's like, 3:00. I'm like, arbitrary. Now I know he was making up some arbitrary number. And I'm looking at the window. I'm like, I said 3:15. I'm already feeling stressed that I'm late. I'm looking over there. I was like, doesn't seem like many people there. So we go over there. We go in, like, they're half dressed. They're like, of course, they're really hospitable. Like, just sit down, just kind of hang out here. I miss an hour before their family starts showing up. And of course, I'm already like, listen, I said it would come at 3. This little kid's birthday party should have been over at 4, maybe 4:30. And I need to go home now. And it wasn't until like 6, 7 before it's like everybody's there and it's rolling. And the whole time I'm sitting here being like, I've got a choice to make of this like beautiful family and people and food and this celebration, though it's not going to fit my time schedule and things I wanted to do back at home. And but this, I mean, to me, it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, is like this ability to, this deeply intentional commitment to it, just a way of being. What difference have you seen it make? So both of you have practiced really faithful and beautiful neighboring in multiple neighborhoods, including the current one that you're in. What difference do you see it make on others or on neighborhoods when people are committed to that practice?
Well, I know for me, just going back to what you said earlier, it's messed up my timing because I like to be task oriented and I like to have everything in a certain box. I've got 2 little children and their schedule is really
pretty
full.
Calm too. They're just very quiet.
My husband has got mad stuff to do. Like, he wants to be everywhere all the time. Yeah. And I am more not introverted, but I like things just right. I'm like, I got my little thing. I want my P's and Q's. Like, let's go here, do this, and you go home. Neighboring messes all that up because we're like, okay, I got these things I've got to do. I've got time, deadlines, blah, blah, blah. And your neighbor will come and just sit on your porch or come ask you for something, or you drive home and there's a situation going on and you're like, all right, this ain't my business, but I'm about to make it my business because we're neighbors. Yeah. And so just this idea of this kind of manicured time sensitive, everything is going to happen between 9 and 5.
Yeah.
And it does not.
Mm.
It is just, it's going to jack you up. So if you're like, I can't be like if you're super inflexible, you're about to get jacked. Like it's just going to mess you up. But that's where the beauty is. It's just where the beauty is. And this happened to us recently because my kids had soccer and they got to go to school the next day. But my husband's like, this community of folks, they're going to go to a movie at 7:15 at night with their kids. And I'm like, are y'all crazy? Y'all got to go to school. And so I said, okay, we're going to go. And so I disrupted my life.
Mm-hmm.
I broke from my norm.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I did. That thing got me. I connected with some amazing people, got to just love on some amazing people, connected with complete strangers who are now some of my sweetest friends, because I chose to have my life disrupted. Because the bigger picture is I want to live in a posture where I'm woven into people and they're not just having to fit in between this 9 to 5 window. This work will blow that up.
Was that an amen? That sound you just made? That was an amen?
That is an amen and an exclamation point. For sure. It will disrupt your life. And if you're doing it right, I would say that, lingering is one of those signs when you can allow yourself, you have the comfortability to allow yourself to linger, to just be fully present. Because that's one thing that is a definite do not keep watch on your time.
Oh, yeah, looking at your phone.
Just go. Because you're making me nervous.
Exactly.
Just go on wherever because your mind is already there.
Right.
You're not even here just physically. And so just take your physical wherever else. But so I think it's also you've arrived when you don't know when, like when you, there's not a designated time to start. And that's one of the things I know that Sean has noticed me saying all the time, just come on over. Just come on over.
Come on.
And they'll say, well, when does it end? Whenever you leave.
Right.
I mean, that's on you.
Whenever I have fallen asleep on the couch or whenever you leave.
Or just stay.
I have said that
Or
too.
stay. I may be snoring, but you just
fine.
make it
Do you
That's
fam.
That's fine.
You fam.
But it doesn't take to that level. So it has to be, I think, to be natural and organic in your person. So you want to be your authentic self. You don't want to show up as something orchestrated in that I'm forcing myself to, put on this facade because the mask will fall. It will come off. You can't keep it on forever. And I've seen that happen as well.
Yeah, I think I noticed as an indicator for my wife and I of like the boundaries of like who's family or who's neighbor, or if you really say, like, let's belong to each other, like people will take that seriously. And seeing over time that like the knock on the door went from like, just kind of grit my teeth and okay, I'm gonna open the door. Was it? No one told me what time that they were coming or what time they'd be here, but and then like, like eye rolling or huffing, like just the softening of like, almost like, okay, who is it this time? What are we doing? And remember like one Saturday night, like, I don't know what project my wife was working on for work that was coming on Monday, but it's like past 11 p.m. on a Saturday, like I was preaching for a friend at their church on Sunday or something. I'm trying to make up a sermon late at night to go do this on the next day. And it's like after 11, they knock on the door. I'm like, now this is a first. Like normally I'm used to it happening at, some kind of, what make quote normal hours. I don't know. We opened the door and the kids from next door there, plus a grown man we've never seen before. Like this is their uncle or whatever. And they're waving us to come over. I'm like, and I'm still had the impulse of like, why, what is it for? What do you need? How long is it going to take? Like these are all the questions that are running and like, let's just go. And I still to this day have no idea why we were there. But they had food and there was music playing and their grandmother, who was somewhere around 300 or 400 years old, was also dancing at the time. And I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced. And so as we're walking over, both of us could feel the tension of like, that late and deadlines we're facing and like walking over and then sitting there and leaning over like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. But that's like and it's profoundly hard we're undoing sets of practices and ways of being that have been deeply formed in us for a long time. And
I like what you were saying a little bit. What you're touching on for me is this idea of like, how do I benefit from this? Like you're knocking on my door, you want me to come here. What's the benefit? Like you got to prove to me that this is worth it. And this neighboring or this posturing, it acknowledges that of like, it's not a mutual relationship. Oh, we actually ain't neighboring because I'm still looking at me and mine. And does this fit into what I need? And how does this benefit me versus going, it ain't always about me.
Yeah.
Like we're supposed to be doing this together. So I appreciate that. That was a good example to me of just that mutuality.
So FCS, is an organization that does a lot of really big, robust things. So we're a community development organization. So lots of housing, businesses are being started. So you can see physical changes in the neighborhood footprint from our presence and our work here. So I want to ask if neighboring is a core value that should show up not just in like neighboring specific types of programs, but it's supposed to be a core value, shows up in everything. What difference does it make in all the stuff we're building and doing from a development perspective if we don't have neighboring? Like why does that so necessary? Like, well, why can't we just build enough affordable housing or build the businesses we need or make schools better or make a health clinic available? Like, let's just do all the development work. Like, why is neighboring a core value that has to show up even in the midst of that kind of work?
It's that power dynamic for me again. And it's saying that you're going to, somebody external to the neighborhood is going to make decisions about, how the neighborhood looks, how, what resources or commerce we have access to. And, you didn't even ask me what we need. And so I'll always lean into that power dynamic and the value of dignified interdependence of asking, can we do this together? Can we think this through at least together so that it makes sense to this place as it is and that upholds and values the culture and identity that's already been formed here organically. So.
I definitely agree with that. And I would add just I like visuals. I often think of visuals. And so when I think about this work, it's important that we have good commerce. I can't even say the word. Commerce.
There we go.
Wow.
I don't even know
Hello,
what you're saying.
language.
What's going on
Hello,
over there?
English is my only language. That word, it's important to have housing and school, education, etc. And this idea of like this connective tissue, this idea of this ecosystem that is working together, that's talking together. In neighborhood engagement with this team, one of our taglines is that we would have flourishing families and connected communities. And so the importance of having those entities talk to each other. So it's one thing if you build some jobs or you got some good housing stock, you got a couple schools. But if your schools are terrible and there's stuff going on in the house and nobody's addressing that and those two ecosystems aren't talking to each other or working together to try to figure out what the challenges are or how to grow, what do you really have? And so that connective tissue, that neighboring actually undergirds those ecosystems to say, okay, we're glad you're here and you're necessary for our flourishing. We want to make sure that if there's any sickness or any challenges, that neighboring piece is that connective tissue so that those things can talk to each other. So if there's great things happening, awesome, let's celebrate it. Let's big up it. And if there's some challenges, we need to be figuring out how do we work together to see flourishing families and connected communities.
And if you were to enter in deeply just into the sheer daily mess of the 1,000 decisions that our team of 40 plus makes on a daily basis, I can say without a doubt, all those decisions are influenced by this posture of neighboring. Which parcels we buy, in which order we buy them, how quickly we acquire them, when we turn them into something, what we turn them into, even the design of the house that gets built on that spot, what goes in that house, like what businesses we start, which properties we put businesses in, where we orient the front door, what products are on the shelf. So that for us, neighboring, yes, there's programs, and we'll have a later series about neighborhood engagement as one of our pillar divisions that Pam leads. And so there's a lot of strategic plans and activities and measurables that go into that. But it would be a massive misunderstanding to not recognize every decision, every plan is filtered to this posture of neighboring. And it can't be just a few programs and I love kickball and picnics, and those are beautiful, but if you're doing all that, but it's not affecting, to Stacey's point about power, how we're making what decisions to do, what, when, where, why, and how, then we're kind of missing something pretty significant. Well, so let's pretend that people have heard you guys singing your beautiful harmonious song here. Actually, if you want to sing us out when we're done? You guys
Okay.
down for that? Stacy's like, hard pass.
Maybe next time.
Let's say people are all in, convinced that yes, this posture, this intentional practice of neighboring is necessary. What are you gonna say? Some do's and don'ts if they want to lean into this and give it a go. Give me some do's and don'ts for
Stacey,
that.
don't tell them. Tell them.
Stacey wants the don'ts. I think she's got a little.
She got a list of don'ts. Y'all better write this down.
No, I would say do assume a posture of humility first.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say do ask yourself what your capacity is, and how much you're willing to invest, because there's no wrong answer. We've got plenty of people that will come, neighbors that will come out, and there's 2-minute Tom, and then there's 2-hour Timmy, and so knowing that about yourself adds character to the neighborhood. And so to me, that's kind of dignifying to just be accepting of people's different, quirks, because we all got them. I would say don't come in looking for problems, looking for trouble, looking for what's wrong. Look for what's right first, and then let somebody tell you what's wrong if they want to. Other than that, mind your business.
I've one of our former colleagues would say fairly often, if you've moved in and you're not just practicing neighboring in a place where you've been for a long time, but if you're new to a space, kind of say like minimum of a year, don't lead anything or take control of anything. Right. And that's when you're most motivated, because it's new and it's fresh and you got all these ideas and all the things you want to do is like change nothing, do nothing, be curious, listen, learn, love and be loved. And especially if you're a majority culture in a minority neighborhood, maybe extend that to 3 years. Like just slow your roll, there's big work to be done. There's generational change that needs to be created. We got time. And it this kind of slow, like at some level, like you're an intentional neighbor, but mind your business on some of that. Like you just listen and learn, be curious, like be invited in is really crucial. Pam, what would you say? Do's and don'ts.
Oh my gosh. So many stories come to mind. One of my first ones, I'll be quick, y'all.
No, tell that story.
But one of my first things, driving through the neighborhood, I was driving through this neighborhood in Lakewood, and I was on the backside by myself, probably where I shouldn't be. But I was in the cut. I was in the cut, and I knew I was in the cut, and I was just like, all right, whatever, I'm in the cut. So I'm driving down the street, and this precious lady weaves her way onto the street, walking in front of my car, just walking. And I was aware of the housing, which was all falling apart. I was aware that she looked like she's a part of the homeless community. And I saw the problems, to Stacey's point. I saw what the challenges were. And as I kept looking, I could almost hear this internal conversation of now that you've seen the problem, do you see the beauty? And so this intentional work, because you're going to be ready. If you like me, it's easy to criticize. It's easy to find what ain't right. But you have to really look to see what's beautiful. And I saw that this lady, she wasn't just like this homeless lady dragging in the street, but she was actually having a conversation with somebody, and she was singing a song. What? And I'm like, because I had my windows down a little bit, because I was like, I'm in the cut, I don't know where I am. But as I listened, as I lingered, I could hear her not just dragging in the street, but she was literally just singing. She was having a good time. She was not aware that that this is her street. This was not my car street. But it was just that idea of I'm not here to fix you. And I'm going to notice a broken. So I'm not saying take your eyeballs out your head. You're going to see what's challenging, but you better also look for what's beautiful and what's good, and to be able to affirm that. Second story, as I remember I came into this work, we were working with Urban Recipe. They're hosting a co-op here, and I'm fresh on the job. And so I want to be helpful. There's about 40 or 50 families here. We have a lot of seniors in there, not everybody, but there's a lot of seniors. And I thought I was going to be helpful. I'm going to bring out the tables, get the chairs ready, get the little music ready, get all the little stuff situated. So when they show up, they ain't got to do much. They just got to get their stuff. Welcome. I got it. I did it. Look at me. And as I'm being great, the director comes out and she's like, okay. This little sage pixie of a woman right out of Wakanda itself. She pauses me. She looks at me and looks around the room and all of the glory that I've created. And she said, Pam, now, thank you. And if you do all of this, what are the people going to do? Mm-hmm. Did I leave anything for them to do? Mm-hmm. And the point wasn't about how I felt and what I was trying to do. It was all good. Yeah. But the bigger point was they have skin in the game. Yeah. There is something for them to bring to the table, and they need to know that. We know that, and we're going to make space for them to participate. We're not going to do it all just because we can. Yeah. Even if our heart is in the right place, we're going to leave a little bit for them so they can be in the work as well. We're not doing things for them. We're doing things with them.
Yeah.
I think the listeners should try to sit on their hands right now and see how comfortable
Not if you're driving.
is.
If you're listening to this driving, please don't sit on your hands.
Yes, keep your hands 10 and 2.
Because you have to get comfortable with that posture, that position.
And it is not comfortable.
It's not comfortable, but
because a lot of people get into this because they're doers, right? They're action oriented. They want to accomplish things. They feel urgency of the problems in the world. I'm gonna get it all. Yeah.
And to be honest, like you may not always have staff to come help you. You don't have volunteers. Mm-hmm. You don't even know your neighbors like that. Yeah. Like the people you're aiming to serve, you don't know them like that. Like, Sally, can I invite you to come set up this water cooler? I don't know. So I can be charitable on that side, but it's also like this bigger picture of where can I make space? Yeah. Like I can make a beautiful Christmas store, but if I do it all, they just walk in and go, well, Pam did it. What do I have to do? Yeah. Versus going, I need you to do this. Like you've seen what we're going to build. I need you to come with me to build this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to like, if you've not yet had the opportunity to be like missioned to, or be the object of someone else's compassion and concern, to at least try to like, mentally imagine to empathize with what that's like. Yeah. I remember one time being in my front yard playing with my kids and neighbors' kids, and they're kind of climbing all over me, and we're just kind of doing what we do in the afternoons, outside. Mm. And these two guys are walking on the street, and you can kind of tell you don't live in this neighborhood, do you? Mm. Well, you're dressed. You got something religious to share with me. And I'm like, and of course, the part of me just wants to be like, don't make eye contact. Do whatever I can with my body posture to like look off-putting. But when you have adorable kids climbing all over you, it's hard to look threatening. At that point in time, like this 4-year-old girl's not as scared of me. You probably shouldn't be. But so they just walk right up in my yard, and I'm like, oh God. I was like, don't be a jerk, don't be a jerk, don't be a jerk. And they didn't really ask much, but we're just like, hey, can we share this with you or pray with you? And I was like, okay. I did. I mean, I was like, I know, because normally if I'm outside by myself and I see them coming, I'm like, go inside, lock the door, go inside, lock the door. Because they're not from the neighborhood, right? I know, like, this is just your, monthly drop off to be walking through here doing this. And I agreed, and of course they began to pray for me, knowing not a lick about me at all. And it's funny because the kids don't care about their need to pray for me because they're still like climbing over my head, this is happening. And like, in just the nature of their words, I was like, this is so, it was humiliating. Or I was just like, but their tone of voice was also like, that felt so compassionate and giving and affirming. But all this, I was like, this just feels so awful, And I was like, how much have I done this? Like, how much has my presence communicated that to others? And so long story to simply say that I think one of the do's, don'ts, I don't know, is being willing to make mistakes and be willing to acknowledge it.
That humility.
Can you do the reparative work? Because you're going to mess up. Like, I don't care if you've been doing this 20 years. You're going to, like, I don't care if it's your best friend. You're going to make mistakes with people that know you better than anybody else in the world. So in neighboring, you're definitely going to make those missteps. And like, how do you acknowledge it, repair it, do that kind of soul work that has to be done?
A great story.
Yeah. Well, tell it.
So
you had like the look of like, do I have permission to say this story? You do, even though I don't know what it is.
Because to Pamela's point, I was driving down Spring Road, and I was starting at a new church, and I saw this young man on crutches, but 2 of them, and they had the arm braces. But he is just running awkwardly down the sidewalk, but he looked so free and beautiful. And I just remember being struck by that beauty. And so I went on to the church. And a few minutes later, I was like, there's that guy. He goes to church here. I need to know him. Cool. And so his name is Jonathan, and we became very good friends. And so together we met a lady that was sitting by herself. And so we were like, you want to be alone or do you want company? Do you mind if we nudge up on this bench with you? And so she invited us, and it turned out that she's blind. And so here we are, this weird trio of people, and we were invited to go to another church for service. Like our church was blending with this church for a Sunday service. And so I offered to drive these two people. And so we go, and, service was great. It was packed because the two churches in one sanctuary. It's time to leave. So I round up the kids and head on out. And I get about halfway home. I'm like, oh my God, I left those two. I left them in that church.
Stacy.
And I pull back up as fast as I can. And they're about to lock the doors at the church. I'm like, and this is the worst part, because I was like, I think there's somebody in there. And they were like, no, there's not. And I said, I'm pretty sure there is. And I was like, it would be a guy
because someone
on
left them in there, not to point fingers or anything.
It will be a guy on crutches and a blind lady with a cane. And but there can be comedy in those mistakes. And so my two dear friends that I left behind, we're just having the best time in there. Like, wonder what's taking her so long.
Oh my gosh.
And the person at the other church that was locking the door was like, that's like the worst and best story that's ever happened and how that worked out. Wow. So to your point, be able to laugh at yourself and laugh with your neighbors, because life's just way too short to take it all too seriously.
Being close to the Ramadan season, the story of my stupidity, there was some community organizing work I was doing, and there's it's a multi-religious community, and so like, how do I facilitate some conversations between Christians leaders and Muslim leaders, and just like let's build relationships. Like, this is a lot of refugees and immigrants in this community. There's people from all over the world, and like, how do we just learn stories, know names, and just kind of build connection. And then I had a friend who runs a restaurant that sells halal food, and like, I'm like, and I know he would love that that we gather here. So I said, hey, can I get like these groups together? Probably about 20 of us. It's like, we'd love to do it. We'll do the buffet and all this, and like, so I schedule a lunch between these local religious leaders, and we sit down. I notice they're not eating. I was like, it's Ramadan. These people are fasting, and this moron has scheduled a lunch as our way of understanding each other, But like, they there was no reference to it. They hardly even didn't think it was funny in the sense that like they were so gracious. We had gifts. Anyways, it's like, just I would rather you try and look like an idiot than like. Kind of hold back. And like, because at some level, like, hey, Imran, remember that time I invited you to lunch in Ramadan? It forms a whole different neighborly relationship, which I did remember because one of the guys lived like just a couple houses down. Like the next day, he's mowing his yard, and I stop him like, you're fasting. You shouldn't be mowing. You want me to mow for you? I don't want to mow when I'm fasting. But it just forms a whole different kind of connection. Now, our three core values: neighboring, dignity, development. I feel like neighboring and dignity have been thoroughly in this. We haven't named dignity as overtly, though. I feel like it's been threaded all the way through. So before we wrap up, I want to name it more overtly. How does dignity show in all these conversations we've been talking about? What is the place or space when we talk about dignity as one of those core values that influences this whole conversation we've been having?
I love this word because it's something that everybody has. It's not something that FCS or even Stacy or I would give to someone. It's not something you can go buy. But if you're breathing, you have this. You're created. You have this dignity. Your work, our work, is just simply affirming what you already have. And so we're just wanting to be intentional about like you have inherent worth, value. You have something to add to the table, and it may not be money. You may have a little time. You have a sense of humor. You have a connection. You have I know a guy. Like I love a good I know a guy person. You have something to bring to the table. And so this work is always looking for that because you have it. We just gonna find it. So it's just we're just excavating what is already in a space. And so walking to a neighborhood at first glance, you just think, oh, there's not a lot of resource here.
Yeah.
And you could not be
Yeah.
further from the truth.
Yeah.
If you look again, you'll find a wealth of things.
Yeah.
And so our work has got to be about excavating what's valuable and what's there. And so if there are people there, you have a wealth of things because we are inherently valuable. And so for us, that's what we're looking at. We're talking about this idea of dignity. It's not just programmatic, but it's saying you have something, you are someone worth valuing and worth sharing in this work with.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would echo what Pamela said because it says that you have purpose, your life matters, and I'm willing to linger around
To see it.
to see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just like we mentioned earlier about the thousands of daily decisions that are made being influenced by neighboring, same issue with dignity. There's been more than a few like nonprofit organizations that have visited FCS, have walked into the homes that we've built, they've walked through the stores that we operate, and some of the reactions that I've seen is like, wow, this is really beautiful. And the underlying contrast, the juxtaposition they're setting up in that statement is, I'm really used to when you do nonprofit housing for the poor, you can kind of do, low quality work, and people just be grateful that they've got a home. Or if you're going to set up a set of stores, like it's going to look and feel a certain way. And even the reaction of some of our neighbors, like when some of our stores open, kind of walking in, being like, "What's this?" Because like this neighborhood has not been invited into businesses like that for a good while. So again, like being able to see these as core values that show up in everything. That do we believe in the dignity, the beauty, the power, the deserved nature of these things, right? That like that we're not doing this to find the low income grateful person for all the good we've done. Like, no, this is just what people deserve. This is what life ought to look like, and we're going to lean into that kind of work. Well, thank you guys.
I love that you highlighted that this idea of in this work. To your point, just want to press it in harder. That you feel like. And I've definitely been on this side as a person who's been giving. This one-way giving idea really lends itself to this idea of like, well, you should be grateful.
Yes.
At some point, like you move from like, I'm excited to serve. You get 5 years in and you become a little fatigued. Like your love becomes fatigued, your energy, your zeal, your moxie, it gets tapped and taxed. Because you've been peopling, and people I love this work, but sometimes people make this work hard. And so when people are peopling and things get challenging, that love that you once had gets real challenged. And so at some point you switch that and you're like, well, you should just be grateful for this. I've given you something. Why are you complaining? And so that's where we're like, wait a minute, hold on. Am I in the power seat? Or is this really a mutual relationship that we're having? And so you have to kind of always be mindful, because that thing is going to sneak in there.
Oh, it will.
Constantly. It just it's a part of this gig. And so it's almost like weeds in a garden. You don't just go, oh, we have some low income housing and everything is great, or we're neighboring. You have to always be looking at those weeds that keep sneaking into your heart of like, I've been in this for a minute. People are peopling. I'm tired. Housing, I gave y'all, we got enough housing stock. We have this much funding for this. Pick a random doorknob, I don't really care. Pick a random lighting, I don't really care. No. If our housing director was in here, she cares about every little nook and cranny, because she's like, I see myself in that house. Do I see myself in that house? Would I want to live here? If it ain't good enough for you, if it ain't good enough for me, why do I think it's good enough for you? And if I think that, then that's a weed I need to plug. And so just being aware of how that is so insidious, like it's just in there. And you just have to be mindful of that weed that's going to creep in.
We have
and one more thing.
No, keep it.
And the idea of like in our work, we're not just creating programs and policies and all these amenities for the people we hope to come. So most communities are like, we have funding and we want to make an organic, grocer. I'm not talking smack about organic grocers or whatever. But we are really postured of saying we want to make a space for everybody to be here. Not only mixed income housing, but mixed income retail. That you have a place here, that your money is good here. So if you need your Cheetos and Takis, or if you need your organic bananas or whatever, all that's right here. And if you have whatever your housing needs, if you're a college student and you want to come and live back in the neighborhood, there's housing stock for you. So it's not just a family of 5 that can afford to live here. And so it's just, again, making space for every person, whatever your economic strata you find yourself in, that there's a place for you.
Yeah.
That's dignity.
Yeah. And I love that you've pressed into that stuff that can sneak into our hearts in this work, because it's, I think for our listeners, if you are in a space where you have found yourself frustrated at the either complaints or lack of gratitude in those that you're seeking to serve, that's probably an indicator that you need to hit pause. And either you're in a place where you need to do some renewal work, or the mechanism you're serving within is fundamentally creating those dynamics. Right? There's a client we were working with that served people who are primarily street homeless. And they were like wrestling through like what to do with their model, how to improve it, how to change it, all this kind of stuff, and like found themselves just like articulating that the people that were coming for the meal were like wanting this, not that, and they were being choosy about this, that, and the other. And they're like, well, are they really that hungry if they're being choosy about things? And now I totally know where that's coming from. So there's no shade there, but like it's definitely those indicators to be like, you would prefer them to be less than human. Because if they don't care and they're just grateful for whatever's given to them, that's not human, right? That like you should actually be like, we've created an environment where they believe they have choice and they have agency, they have voice and access. Yes. You should celebrate that they have choices. But I mean, we even have the the little throwaway phrase of beggars can't be choosers. I'm like, why?
Why?
Yeah.
Do you think because they're begging they're not human anymore? Right? We should all be choosers. I don't care if I'm broke or a millionaire. Choice is a part of the dignity of human experience, right? So I think that's just a good, kind of gut check for us. And we all get into that space. I don't know anyone who's not gotten into that space. So if you're in that space, just let this be a signal to be like, all right, hit pause, and take a look at what's generating that. Yeah.
It's not an indictment; it's an opportunity to reevaluate, because it's like we want to make sure that we're doing this in the best posture possible.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because I think that the overall health and well-being starts with self. So you can't pour out what you haven't poured in, and not in this work, or not in this, neighboring practice of neighboring. No.
On the various episodes this podcast will host, it's our hope that whatever we're talking about in any given episode, these values of neighboring and dignity and development will be obvious even when we're not talking about them. And thank you both for being a part of this conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Place Matters is produced by Focused Community Strategies, whose mission is to partner with under-resourced neighborhoods to provide innovative and holistic development that produces flourishing communities and God's shalom. Place Matters is hosted by FCS's training and consulting team known as the Lupton Center. If you would like to inquire about our training and consulting services, please reach out to us via our website or find us on LinkedIn and social media. This information can be found in the show notes. If you would like to watch these episodes, the videos can be found on our YouTube channel. And if you like these episodes, please share them on social media. Your support means a lot to us. This show was edited by Tim Rhodes with music by Eric North. Special thanks to David Park and Becca Malpass at FCS for their work in organizing and recording these sessions. We'd also like to say thank you to our partner, Lilly Endowment, whose Thriving Congregations grant has made this podcast possible.